Top 10 things to do not to mess up a single family home rental or really any rental. So, number one, make sure you buy the property correct with the right numbers that make sense, that it actually cash flows. And that goes into number two, which make sure to account for vacancy, because you will have vacancy and you should always account for that depending on the market and depending on if it's like a single family or 4-unit or whatever. That vacancy number is going to be different, right? So make sure you put that into the calculation. Number three, make sure to calculate your CapEx, capital expenditures, into your numbers. Why is it so important? What's CapEx? The roof, the furnace, windows, all the high dollar items that you will need to replace eventually, you need to set money aside for that. So depending on how old your roof is or your furnace, you should be setting aside for that money, so that way when that furnace does break in 5 or 10 or however many years, depending on how old yours is, you have a reserve to fix that. Going along with the calculation, number four is make sure that you set aside reserves for maintenance. Things will break. Houses always break. So set money aside for that. And fifth, which is very, very, very important, and a lot of people forget about all the time, is make sure you set aside at least 10% for smaller stuff for the property management. Even if you manage it, it doesn't matter. You're not working for free. Don't act like you're going to work for free. A lot of people don't put that 10% aside because they're like, oh, I'll just manage it. Well, if you need to hire a manager, a lot of people do that because they're like, oh, look, I'm making a 10% return. No, you're not. So make sure you put in the property management. It's super important, even if you do it. People do this all the time. Don't work for free. This is the point of having rentals. Number six, make sure that you have the correct licenses and certificates, right? Some houses require a rental certificate or rental cert and inspection from the city. So make sure you have that in place. 7, make sure you have a good lease. And if you're using a property manager, make sure your property manager has a good lease. Just because they're a property manager doesn't mean they have a good lease, right? Pay the lawyer the few $100s. You're going to use it over and over again, and it's going to be really good. Number 8, make sure that you have good insurance that covers you as a landlord, right? And that's the house, right? And on top of that, make sure to require that all your tenants also, this is like 8.5, make sure that all your tenants have renter's insurance, because there is liability in those renter's insurances that covers you even further if your insurance doesn't cover it if something were to happen. So always, 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 always require your tenants to have insurance. Number 9, screen your tenants very, 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 very well, because the better the tenant, the better your outcome. Same thing with the property. If you manage it yourself, you screen them very well. Background check, credit check, all that stuff. If you have a property manager, make sure they are screening very, very, very well. Don't ever rush to fill a property. I would rather have a vacant property than to rush and rent it out to the first guy that can fog a mirror that I'm going to have to end up evicting because they're a bad tenant. So don't ever rush to fill a unit. Very, very important. And number 10, lastly, is, I think, super important, mostly if you're on a scale, is have good maintenance people that can make repairs for you instead of, for example, having to call a plumber for something silly or an electrician for something silly. Because guess what? Those guys that are in the trades, they're going to charge you, I don't know, anywhere from $100 to $150 just to come look at it. If you have a plumber, you can, or a maintenance person, right, a handyman, you can pay them a fraction of that cost to fix that, right? So you're in the business of renting your house and getting it repaired, not saying cheaply, but the most cost-effective way. And that's always the most cost-effective way. When you have to call a plumber at a crazy time or during the holidays or whatever, that's when you're going to be paying way more. So make sure you have maintenance people, handymen, or whatever you end up kind of doing with that to make sure that you're not paying exorbitant fees for emergency calls to random companies that you've never worked before with. That was a backward word. But anyway, hopefully that helped. That's like the top 10 things I would say to not mess up a rental house. There's probably a million more, but those were just the first 10 that came to mind. So if you have any questions, drop a comment below, and I'll probably make some more videos on each one of those, because I think each one of those could probably use their own video. So like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, drop a comment below, and I'll be glad to help. Have a good one, and I'll see you on the next one.